Hi folks, it's Jonny McFarlane here at Ibrox after Rangers 1-0 win over Aberdeen this afternoon in the Scottish Premiership. It was quite a tough game, a hard-fought game, a lot of chances created, it must be said, by the Ibrox team, but not too many moments where Rangers actually showed the kind of quality in the final third that would be required to defeat Aberdeen more than the one goal. The goal itself was an absolute beaut. It was Todd Cantwell with a volley, James Tavernier corner, John Souttar blocked the man and the ball fell to him in the box, and it was a wicked volley from about 12, 13 yards into the bottom right-hand corner of the net. Kel Roos, who'd been excellent throughout the game, making a number of saves, had absolutely no chance whatsoever to stop that shot. It was outstanding. Rangers kind of controlled the remainder of the game. Aberdeen didn't have too many chances after that, but they did have some chances early in the first half. Duke, who was pretty impressive today, it must be said, clearly a good player. I think we know that already from the numbers that are coming in from the Aberdeen winger, and he had a couple of very, very good chances. One well saved by Robbie McCrory. One he went through one-on-one with the keeper after being put in over the top by Miovski, who'd sold Ben Davies quite spectacularly around the halfway line. And Duke was unable to find the finish. He put it over the bar, but rather than giving him stick for the finish, I'd like to think that Robbie McCrory deserves credit for making himself big and narrowing down the angles, which he did well. And McCrory, it must be said, I've got to give him major kudos. I thought he had a really good game, couple of excellent saves, and overall he can be really, really proud of the way he played. His first start since all the way back in those two games, not even last season, but the season before, when he played against Alashkert and Celtic. Pretty sure that's the case. Might be wrong, but certainly that's what my memory's telling me right here and right now on this live video. So correct me if I'm wrong in the comments there. You'd have to say, in terms of the action on the pitch, it wasn't the best day. It wasn't a game that many people will remember over the course of the years ahead. But perhaps Michael Beale's comments after the game will be more memorable than the actual game itself. He came out punching. I think it's safe to say this is the most combative I've seen Michael Beale in terms of criticising the team. Clearly now with no Scottish Cup and no league to play for, the gloves are off a little bit. And while Beale, he didn't go to town on them or anything like that, he did. He was a little bit more critical than he has been in the past, and you saw that absolutely with Alfredo Morelos, where he said you saw a difference when Alfredo came on in terms of energy and not a positive change. We will need a focal point to this team. Antonio isn't fit at the moment, and Alfredo will obviously be moving on. So Beale there absolutely confirming categorically that Alfredo Morelos' time is very much up at Rangers, that he won't be remaining at the end of the season, and that come the summer, Rangers will be in for a new number 9. Now, we were pretty much certain that was going to be the case anyway. And when Michael Beale was asked to confirm it later on in the press conference, he said, I thought I confirmed that a few days ago. But absolutely now, there's no doubt that Alfredo Morelos is on his way. He is now on the verge of becoming an ex-Rangers player. Now, I've got some comments coming in I'd like to address. One from Rob Call. Johnny, is McCrory keeping the jersey for next week? For me, Rob, I would say yes. You need to see this lad perform in the pressure cooker environments. There's no point in just looking at him in games where there's nothing on the line. So I'm absolutely giving him a chance against Celtic. We know that this is a big game from a morale point of view as much as anything else. Very big game for Michael Beale, because you just can't be a Rangers manager and lose too many of these fixtures. But I thought he did really, really well today. Good, comfortable with the ball at his feet, good saves. And listen, it might not work, but if it doesn't work, you'll have a bit more information than you do if you play Alan McGregor, who we know everything about at this stage. So I'd definitely give McCrory his chance. I think he's earned it with his performance today. David Aitken, what a performance from Cantwell today. Well-deserved man of the match. Work rate is second to none. I think that's a great point, David. This is a kid that I think thought he was going to be a sort of baller when he came in, a kind of number 10 who's creating, but he really gets stuck in. Well taken goal as well. Hopefully he can keep up this form on a consistent basis. Absolutely back that up. Todd Cantwell today was a level above the players around him, and he looks like a superb piece of business by Michael Beale. And I think it's safe to say the manager will point to that and say, look what I've done when I've had a bit of cash in the past, and I'll do it again if you give me the money in the summer. Colin Williams saying, can you expect no Davis or Morelos next weekend? Ridvan, Hagi and McCrory to start. Well, I think you're absolutely spot on there. Ben Davies went off with an injury. We're going to get more information on that as the week progresses. Looked like a hamstring injury. Michael Beale wasn't 100% informative about that. I don't think they know themselves yet, so we'll find out more as time goes on. Meanwhile, Alfredo Morelos, I'd be shocked if he featured for Rangers against Celtic, given the fact Michael Beale filleted him after the game. So, yeah, I think it's safe to say that it's likely to be Sakala or Cholak if he's back fit in that one. In terms of Ridvan, I've seen a lot of positivity around his performance. I thought he was fine, but I didn't think he was great. I suppose as the game went on, he was more comfortable. He looked like he was settling into the rhythm of it. And that's to be expected, I suppose, after the amount of time that he's been out. But I didn't think he was terrific or anything like that. But yeah, I think he should start probably against Celtic as well. We're not going to know about what these players are capable of unless you test them at the top level. So absolutely get them in. Yanis Hagi, I think maybe a wee bit unfair to throw him into that one. Still doesn't look fully fit. He admitted that himself when I spoke to him in midweek. He talked about the difference between fitness and aerobic fitness. And what he's talking about there is just obviously match minutes. If you get more minutes in the tank, then you're more capable of performing for a longer level. So I'm not 100% sure on Hagi throwing him against Celtic. I think you need to have a bit more grit and determination about the midfield. So we'll see on that one. He doesn't have an awful lot to play with, Michael Beale. So it could be that Hagi plays. But I didn't think he was great today. But it's another 60 odd minutes in his legs, and I think that's clearly important. Colin Cooper having a pop at Rabi Matondo looked like a lost puppy out there, Johnny. What do you think? Well, you know what, Colin? You're not the only person that said that to me. And I thought Rabi Matondo was actually okay in the game. He set up, I think, 3 really good chances for Fashion Sakala. One, an outstanding little flick round the corner that played in Sakala through one-on-one with Roos, but Roos made a very good save. He didn't have a huge impact on the game, but I thought he had flashes, he had moments, he looked creative. Is it enough? Probably not. But I didn't think he looked lost. I think that's a little unfair, Colin. But perhaps if I watch the game again, I'll have a different take because you're not the first person that's thrown that at me. Colin Williams, Wright would start next week ahead of Matondo. Well, Scott Wright is such a frustrating player, isn't he? Because he's one of these guys that when he gets the ball down at his feet and he starts to run at players, he looks fantastic. And he had a wonderful run in the second half when he turned one of the Aberdeen players inside out. Can't remember which one it was off the top of my head. Ran at goal, went past another defender, and then screwed a shot over the bar when he looked like he had a really, really good chance to score. And that's the problem with Scott Wright, isn't it? It's the end product. There's no doubt in his talent, but it's not really enough to just have talent. At Rangers, you need to actually get there. A few other people really getting behind the Ridvan Express. Nevitt saying Ridvan looked decent. Steve Shaw said, what about Kent going or staying? Steve, I have to say, I think Ryan Kent is on his way. I think Michael Beale talked about, I thought it confirmed Alfredo Morelos to be going in midweek. And if that's the case, then he certainly confirmed Ryan Kent was going. So I'm going to stick my head on the chopping block and say, no, I think Ryan Kent is probably going to be walking out of Ibrox for the last time in the summer. It's a real shame because I think he's an incredibly talented player. I think he's been at the heart of a lot of the good things Rangers have done over the last 4 years. But unfortunately, I think the time has now come for him to go and try something else. And it'll free up a significant wage for Rangers to go out and invest in someone else who can come in and perhaps offer more consistency at a higher level when it comes to numbers around goals and assists. Although, to be fair to Ryan Kent, his assist numbers have been pretty good over the years. It's more his shooting that's been the problem. He doesn't get into that back post position that so many effective wingers do nowadays. If you look at people like Sadio Mane, like Salah, even look across the city, unfortunately, for Rangers at Leila Bada. And you've got a guy there who's definitely got less talent than Ryan Kent, but is much more effective. And that lack of effectiveness is, I think, ultimately what's going to mean that Rangers fans aren't all that upset about seeing Ryan Kent go out the door at this moment. Now, Michael Beale made the point at the press conference, and I do agree with him. I think that there are some players that people will look back more fondly once there's a little bit of time and space between the current performance and you're looking back over their whole at Rangers. Alfredo Morelos, after all, is the club's top European goal scorer. So I don't think there's any doubt that Ryan Kent as well has delivered so much in the run to Seville, for example, and so much to the title win for 55 that these players in time will be feted as Rangers players. Perhaps not Rangers legends, but certainly as very good players overall for the club, despite how it's ended up with such a disappointing season, I would say. But you know, it could be wrong. Rob Call, another comment coming in saying, after comments like that, he can't play next weekend. Who plays up top? Sakala finishing is not clinical enough. Rob, I absolutely agree with you. Fashion Sakala has been really, really good at times for Rangers when it comes to pure numbers, but at the moment he's going through a really hellish spell. He's had some terrific chances today. He's not been able to take any of them. He's an erratic player, we know that. He's the kind of player that gets a manager sacked, let's be honest. He's up and down, he's mercurial, and he's not someone I'd want to hang my hat on if I was Michael Beale. I think it's time to look at moving him on, if you can move him on for a decent amount of money. At the same time, I do think he's a guy that you can throw in certain games and he can cause a bit of chaos. So I do see why he could be part of the Rangers squad going forward. But I think his time's come and gone, I'll be honest. Somebody giving me a bit of a slaughter and saying I'm ugly. Jonny, not Bonnie McFarlane. That's a bit heart-wrenching. I mean, you know, come on, mate. Don't give me such a hard time. I'm all right. I'll survive. Francis Kutz saying McCrory should be between the sticks next week. He more than earned it today. I totally agree with that sentiment. I think very, very good. And as NT1021 is saying, it does beg the question why he's not been in earlier. I totally agree with that, given you look at the raw numbers around Rangers keepers this season. If you add the two together, John McLaughlin and Alan McGregor, I think it comes to something like 12 goals have been conceded more than they should have based on the expected goals metric. Now, for those of you who aren't into your stats, I won't bore you with ins and outs of that, but just to say that that's 12 goals conceded more than Celtic, because Joe Hart's averaging at about 0, which means he's let in exactly the amount he should have. So 12 goals is a lot in a title race, and while there's a significant points gap now between the two sides, these are the kind of things that can contribute to that significantly. Johnny, were you concerned by Raskin's? I'll just try and pull this up. Sorry, this is from John Dooley. Johnny, were you concerned by Raskin's performance? I don't think he was great today, but to be honest with you, John, I thought Rangers struggled to really control that midfield. I didn't feel like they were absolutely bossing the game. Aberdeen thought had a few good moments, and especially on the break looked pretty dangerous. They're a tidy outfit for Scottish football, I have to say. They've got a bit about them. Like, you look at Miovski up front, if you look at Duke, they're as dangerous as it gets in this league outside of Celtic. And Barry Robson's got them really well organised without the ball. They look a cut above the level that team has been at, certainly under Jim Goodwin before. And they're a lot tougher at the back. So my point is, it's not surprising that Raskin finds it tougher against them than he has against other teams. But I think he needs to show a little bit more. But he's 21 years old, guys, and I think that's something that we have to remember about Raskin. He's got an incredible talent there. It's clear he's a really good player. He saunters about the pitch with that swagger. That's what you absolutely need to perform at Ibrox. But he does have to start putting a stamp on games a little bit more, I think. And is him and John Lundstrom a good foil for each other? Technically great Raskin, physically great Lundstrom. It should kind of work, but I'm not 100% convinced at this point in time. Perhaps if we look ahead to next year with better players around them, Michael Beale actually said something interesting at the presser today. He said, middle of the pitch has not really been our problem. It's been in the boxes. And he's got a point. So perhaps I'm over-egging the pudding on that one. But I didn't think he was brilliant today. I didn't think he was a standout. But he certainly wasn't a disaster. And he wasn't a poor performer or anything like that. So yeah, I think that's it's one to watch. Keep an eye on, because certainly the fans have taken to him, but I don't think he's been as good as Todd Cantwell, who to me was excellent, and who really is standing out in this team as being a really looking like a top Scottish Premiership player, as far as I'm concerned, and I think he'll be very good in the long term. For the club. Ian Thompson agreeing there. Cantwell was good today, but today was a nothing match. Let's see what happens next year. That's absolutely a fair point. There's not any stress or pressure on this one, and we know that stress and pressure can be a major test for any Rangers player, given the demands that are placed on you in this stadium. So I think that's absolutely fair as we go into what will be a much more demanding period next year. Colin Williams saying, Cantwell talking about Kieran Dowell at the presser signing number 1 then. Guys, I think my information is that the Kieran Dowell transfer is done, and I think that's been reported everywhere, or certainly been reported in some outlets, but my information is that that deal has been agreed. It's all tied up. He was asked about it in the press conference. It was it wasn't he wasn't asked to talk about the transfer. He was just asked to talk about Dowell as a player and what he can potentially bring, and he was very positive and said that he's a really good player and he had a really good relationship with him at Norwich. So I think that's one that he was certainly backing. I've got my doubts about Dowell, but the management team at Rangers seem to be really excited about him. There's no doubt about Kieran Dowell has got a really good talent, and he's a player capable of great things, but he's had his injury problems, and I think most people who have spent a lot of time watching Rangers are getting a little bit fed up of the amount of injury issues that the club have had to go through, and the amount of money that's been on the sidelines over the last, certainly over the last year. So I think you are entitled to sort of take a double take when you hear a player who's maybe only really played 25 games a season for the last few years is keenly followed, especially when you're talking about Ryan Jack getting another deal. But let's trust in Michael Beale, I think, is the current state of play. He's shown with Raskin and Cantwell that he is capable of sourcing really talented players, and I don't think there's any doubt those two are extremely talented at the very least. And you just got to hope that he gets the best out of Kieran Dowell. Now, the one thing for me is Beale's talked in the past about these kind of hybrid players who are able to play in multiple positions and do well, and I think that is Dowell to a T. He's a guy who can play across the midfield. So if you've got an injury elsewhere, he's an ideal utility player to have. And interestingly, I was looking back at some of his games in the past. He was playing for Nottingham Forest under Mark Warburton, former Rangers manager, and scored a hat-trick against Hull, in goal for Hull, Alan McGregor. So those two know each other pretty well based on that, I would imagine. And there's no doubt that if Dowell's fit, then he can be a real addition to the squad. Whether he'll come in as a absolute starter every week, that's another question. But certainly I think he's a decent addition based on his skill set. You just got to hope, I think the club will hope that they can sort out his injury issues. But I think there'll be a little scepticism on that from fans based around this season. Tom Drever asking, anyone heard any update on Tom Lawrence? Tom Lawrence will be due back at the end of pre-season, according to my information, Tom. So roughly talking about August-ish for Tom Lawrence. And I think if you can get him back fit, he'll be an absolutely massive addition to the team, because what he brings you is, again, that ability to play across the front, left, right, number 10, up front. Tom Lawrence can do it all. And most importantly, he can ping a ball from 35 yards in the top corner. That's something Rangers have lacked since, well, I mean, the last one that comes to mind is probably Jorg Albertz, but I'm sure there'll have been someone else since then. But having a player who has that capability is absolutely massive, and it will be a huge addition. Now, Yanis Hagi was talking about at the presser in midweek that people get a date in their heads and they think that the player are just going to come back like that. But actually, you're coming back when everyone else has had the pre-season. You're way behind. It takes ages to get back and not necessarily getting minutes. And it might be that that's difficult for Tom Lawrence. It might be he needs to go out on loan for 6 months to get himself fit somewhere where he's going to play. I don't know, but I do think Tom Lawrence is capable of doing things for Rangers. It's just a matter of whether or not how the team's playing and how fit he can get himself. World's Greatest DJ saying, do you think Glenn Camara will be here next term? Absolutely not, mate. I do not think so at all. I think Glenn Kamara's time is come and gone. He should have gone, by all accounts, to France at the end of the transfer window last summer, and Gio wanted him to stay. I think that was a mistake. It was, I think, Nice that were in for him, about £6 million. The club had agreed a fee. And I think that should have been one that they looked to pursue, but it was very late in the transfer window, and Gio didn't think he had enough time to get another person in. But I think you're looking back on that now, it's probably another transfer that should have gone through. Rangers have had a few of these. I think Ryan Kent, Alfredo Morelos, and now Camara as well. It'll be interesting to see what level of interest is in, but I think if you're getting $4 million for Glenn Camara, you're doing well, to be honest, at this stage. 2 years left on his contract, and certainly not been in the greatest of form at all this season. You can get Glenn Camara back to the guy who was absolutely flying in the 55 season, then of course he's a wonderful player, but he's not getting any younger either. I think he's 27 now, so now's the time to cash in. Absolutely. Right, guys, I'm going to call it a day there. It's been 20 minutes of me talking to myself into the screen, so I'm going to go off up the road and get myself a beer, I think. But it's been great talking to you all. Thank you for all your comments and questions. It's been great to go through this game. Obviously, we'd like to be talking about our Rangers team that were on in the real challenge for a title. It's not worked out that way, and we know what's happened across the city today. But there's, I think, a very exciting opportunity for Rangers across the club now, with a new broom to rebuild from the start and to be much more effective in terms of the trophy wins from next season. You look at Michael Beale, I think he's got an awful lot right since he's come in, and I think there's a level of faith that the fans should have based on the evidence so far. So let's park this for now. We'll be back from the Rangers review point of view tomorrow morning. I'm going to be off tomorrow, but I think you'll see Josh and Derek, and they'll have a right good chat about this game and about the implications. So thanks very much for joining me, guys, and hope you have a wonderful Saturday night. Crack open the beers, watch a movie, or head out on the town, whatever.